My name is Edmond Nyabola. I was born and raised in Bondo constituency of Siaya County. Raised largely by my mother. I lost my dad when I was 8 years old. So practically all my life I was raised by my mother, a single mother, and I have two siblings. I did so many things, and my mother would attest to this. I think one that I would consider the worst is at some point, I had an exchange with my mother. There's tensions were high, and we both said some things. You know, as a single mother who's raising a teenage boy, it can be overwhelming, and so I think I pushed the limits in certain instances, and it got to a boiling point, and we had a bit of an exchange, but I think that was settled after that. I regret the fact that I had to go to that now that at least I know better as a person, and I don't think that was one of my proudest moments to this day. My mother is, she's the police, she's the military, she's the preacher, she's everything. My mother is very strict and very blunt with her words, and I think as a kid I received enough beatings, you know, because I used to get into trouble a lot, very cheeky and all over the place. And my mother would obviously, coming from that point of view of being a single parent and, you know, raising a teenage boy, I would get into trouble a lot, and so it was her job always, every time, to, you know, keep me in check and get me focused on the direction that I should. And it was so bad that there was actually a stick just somewhere in a corner waiting just in case I did something wrong, and yeah, it was used a number of times. I remember it was around 2009. I'd come to Nairobi before school holidays, but I was young then, and where I was visiting, there wasn't really much room for, you know, being all about the place and traveling or visiting places in Nairobi. So I didn't know much about Nairobi. So when I came back and had all the freedom as a first-year student at the University of Nairobi, and it's just here, by the way, town, the central business district is just a walking distance and stuff. So I think one of the first things that stood out at first was I got lost within the city. To this day, and it's very funny, I don't even remember where I went, and I don't remember how I got myself back to the University of Nairobi. And yeah, that it took a couple of hours for me to retrace my steps and find my direction into the university. And that was, I think, within the first week or so, I just took a stroll and said, let me tembea in Nairobi. So there was that, and then I found people were too fast for life, you know, just all over the place, vehicles here and there. I had trouble crossing the road most of the time. Yeah, but you catch up on some of these things, and then you just move on with life. And I think also language, because of the Sheng and, you know, the Kiswahili, or the dialect of Kiswahili and perhaps English that people speak around here is not something you're familiar with, and so when you have friends who have grown up around these places, and so you have to catch up on that and be able to participate in conversations. Towards the end of my studies, undergraduate that is, a team from Nation Media Group was visiting universities for a program called Media Lab. I don't know if you're aware. And so they were coming to universities, so they came to the University of Nairobi, and we saw this poster on the billboard about, you know, a meeting with Nation Media Group, and we thought, okay. Before that, I'd never thought about journalism. Like, I didn't even, it wasn't anywhere in perhaps my top 10 list of the things I imagined I would become. So when they did, and I'd specialized in communication, largely corporate communication and PR and stuff like that. So when they came, and then they had this talk, and then there was an essay. You know, I love writing, so I got into that, and then somehow I passed. And then I got into the next stage, came here for some aptitude tests. So this thing was just rolling and rolling over into the next stage, until I think the final one, when, because out of Kenya they were looking for 8 people for that team. Back then I think it was a total of 20, and then Kenya had the most number of entries, 8. In the last interview I finished 9th. And the reason was most of the people I was up against had done things within media, either through blogging, either letters to the editor. So that played out to the advantage. My lack of interest, so to say, before that really did not help me. And then from that point on, I started doing letters to the editor. And within that period, actually, after the interview, they decided to take me up on internship. Yeah, so it took a while, and then I came here, I think in July of 2013. That's when I started as an intern. Was sent straight to the sports desk, and in the early days, you're still thinking, let me just, because there's nothing else, let me just try this. And then you're thinking, you're looking forward ahead, and you're thinking, nah. But this is how life happens. You just find yourself rolling over and over, and here we are. There's a time I did a story about a children's home in Bomet, where there were some foreigners who came here and were molesting the kids and mistreating them, And when we did that story, and it caught the attention of all manner of people in Kenya and, of course, in the US, where they come from, and then they were arrested as a result of that, and they are facing charges now. So I think that is a big moment for me in terms of career. The moment when my resolve and all those other things were tested was sometime last year, when I was doing an expose on the Child Welfare Society of Kenya. So I was up against the who and who in society. I was dealing with a CEO who speaks directly to State House and the powers that be and the First Family and all manner of things, and I was threatened. I was told this and that. It can be scary, but when you know what you're doing and what you want to achieve at the end of the day, then I think some of those things are just worth it. I'm very spiritual, and I believe you know the difference between that and being religious. So I'm very spiritual. I meditate a lot. I'm a very closed-in, quiet person, largely. Many people would disagree. But meditation helps me a lot, because it helps me cool off, just calm myself. And out of the experiences that we've had in life, some of those things, you just, along the way, you learn to pick up life as it is. So when a challenge comes in, you just know that it's always going to happen. That's a fact of life. It's about 90% of this is actually about how you respond to some of these things, as opposed to what exactly is happening. One of my spiritual leaders says something about the challenges we face in life are really external, and they become a problem when we allow them into us and to take control of us. They are all external things. They are illusions, so to speak. And when you welcome them in and you allow them then to bog you down, that's where the problem is.